The machines beeped their monotonous rhythm in the private wing of Mount Sinai Hospital, New York, a sound that had become as familiar as breathing to anyone who entered room 47. Dominic Valentino lay motionless on the pristine white sheets, his once commanding presence reduced to a still form connected to countless tubes and monitors. At 36, he was the Shadow King of the East Coast underworld. The Valentino Empire stretched from the dockyards of Boston to the back rooms of Miami, built not through inheritance but through blood, strategy, and a ruthlessness that had become legend. They called him the Shadow King because no one saw his face and lived to tell about it. His enemies whispered his name like a curse. His allies spoke it like a prayer. Now, 3 weeks into his coma, the man who had survived 17 assassination attempts lay defeated by the 18th. 4 bullets. 1 had torn through his shoulder. 2 had shattered ribs. The 4th had stopped a centimeter from his heart, lodged against bone like fate itself had hesitated. 14 hours of surgery, the best doctor's money could buy. And still, the prognosis grew bleaker with each passing day. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the foot of his bed, reviewing charts she had memorized days ago, hoping somehow the numbers would reveal a different truth. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned the pages. In 20 years of neurology, she had never seen a case quite like this. The brain scans showed activity so minimal it barely registered. Just the stem functions keeping his organs alive. Nothing more. There's no significant brain activity beyond basic stem functions, she explained, her voice carefully measured. We've exhausted every treatment protocol. The swelling hasn't reduced. His organs are beginning to show signs of failure. Isabella Valentino stood by the window, her reflection ghosting against the Manhattan skyline. At 32, she had built her own life far from her brother's bloody empire. 8 years since she had walked away. 8 years of silence, of refused phone calls, of birthday cards returned unopened. She was a doctor now, a healer, everything her brother was not, and yet here she stood, watching the monitors that measured what remained of his life. She remembered him at 16, stepping between her and their drunken father's fists. She remembered him at 20, working 3 jobs to pay for her college applications. She remembered him at 24, the day she discovered what he really did for a living, the day she saw the blood on his hands that would never wash clean. She had loved him. She had hated him. She had abandoned him. Now she would have to bury him. Marco Ricci stood in the corner like a statue carved from grief. 40 years old, Dominic's right hand for 15 of them. He had taken bullets for this man, had killed for him, had believed, with the faith of a zealot, that Dominic Valentino was invincible. The machines beeped on. Indifferent. Relentless. Dr. Chen closed the chart and looked at the assembled group. The lawyer clutching his briefcase like a shield. The ethics board representative with her clipboard. Marco with his reddened eyes. Isabella with her rigid spine. We have 72 hours to make a decision, Dr. Chen said quietly. After that, if there's no change. She paused, the weight of the words pressing down on the room like a physical force. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. The Shadow King had 72 hours left to live, and somewhere in the vast darkness of his coma, Dominic Valentino drifted further from the light, unaware that the thread keeping him tethered to life was about to appear from the most unlikely source imaginable. The door opened quietly, and Elena Martinez entered with her cleaning cart, immediately sensing the heavy atmosphere that clung to the room like fog. She recognized the weight of grief, the particular silence that settled when hope had packed its bags and left. At 28, Elena had learned to read rooms the way others read books. 3 jobs had taught her that. Cleaning at Mount Sinai 4 nights a week, waitressing at a diner in Queens on weekends, scrubbing hotel rooms whenever extra shifts appeared. Sleep was a luxury she scheduled between obligations, and exhaustion had become her constant companion. She noticed the grim faces, the red-rimmed eyes, the woman by the window who looked like she was holding herself together with nothing but willpower. Elena lowered her gaze and began her work quietly, moving around the edges of the room like a ghost. In her experience, invisible was the safest thing to be. The visitors left one by one, the large man with the devastated eyes, the woman with the rigid spine, the doctor with her heavy clipboard. Soon, only the machines remained, keeping their faithful watch over the man on the bed. Elena had been cleaning this room every evening for the past 3 weeks. Room 47, the VIP wing where the sheets were Egyptian cotton and the silence cost more than her monthly rent. She didn't know who Dominic Valentino was, didn't know about the empire or the blood or the fear his name inspired in certain circles. To her, he was simply the man in the coma, the man no one talked to, and so she did. "Good evening, Mr. Dominic, Elena said softly as she began wiping down surfaces. Her slight accent colored her words, a melody of Puerto Rico that she had never quite lost. Another long day, yes, for both of us, I think. The nurses thought her habit was sweet, if a little strange. Dr. Chen had gently explained that while some believed coma patients could hear, there was no scientific evidence to support it. Elena didn't care about the science. Her grandmother, back in Bayamon, had taught her differently. The old woman with hands like worn leather and eyes like deep wells had sat with the dying many times. Mija, she would say, the soul hears what the body cannot. Never let anyone die in silence. It is the loneliest way to go. So Elena talked. My Lily learned a new word today, she continued, moving to adjust the blanket around his shoulders with the same care she used when tucking in her daughter, Stella. It means star. She points at the sky every night now and counts them. 1 Stella, 2 Stella, 3 Stella. Elena smiled at the memory, though her eyes glistened. She can only count to 10. So every night there are exactly 10 stars in the sky. No more, no less. She wiped down the bedside table, careful not to disturb the monitors. You should see her, Mr. Dominic. She's so small, but so full of light. 4 years old, and already she dreams bigger than I ever did. Elena paused, swallowing the familiar ache that came with being a single mother working 3 jobs to afford their tiny apartment in the Bronx. Lily's father had left before she was born. Her own family was thousands of miles away, too far to help, too poor to visit. She wants to go somewhere she can see a million stars, a real dark sky, away from all the city lights. I promised her I would take her someday. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. When I save enough, when the bills stop eating everything, when someday finally comes. She finished her cleaning and did what she did every night. She placed her hand gently on Dominic's forehead, feeling the warmth that meant life still flickered somewhere inside. Que Dios te bendiga, she whispered. May God bless you. Whoever you are, wherever your soul is wandering, I hope you find your way back. Someone out there needs you, even if you don't know who. She gathered her cart and slipped out as quietly as she had entered. She had no way of knowing that in the vast gray emptiness of his coma, Dominic Valentino had latched onto her voice like a drowning man grasping at a rope. In the endless fog where he drifted, Elena's stories about Lily had become the only points of light. Small, persistent, refusing to let him drift away entirely. The machines beeped on, but somewhere in the darkness, something stirred. The next morning, the hospital conference room felt like a funeral parlor. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in the same sickly pallor. Isabella sat at one end of the long table, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marco stood against the wall, refusing to sit, as if remaining on his feet could somehow keep his boss alive through sheer force of will. Dominic's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Anthony Caruso, clutched his briefcase like a life preserver. Beside him sat 2 members of the hospital ethics board, their faces carefully neutral in the way of people accustomed to delivering impossible news. Dr. Chen stood at the head of the table, medical charts spread before her like a map to nowhere. The latest scans show no improvement, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. Brain activity remains at minimal levels. His kidneys are showing early signs of failure. His liver function has declined 12% since last week. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. I've consulted with 3 other neurologists. The consensus is unanimous. Consensus? Marco spat the word like poison. What does consensus know about Dominic Valentino? He survived 4 bullets. 4. One of them a centimeter from his heart. He fought his way out of death's door once already. Mr. Ricci, I understand your loyalty. You understand nothing. Marco's voice cracked. He doesn't quit. He has never quit. Not when his father was murdered. Not when the Kozlov syndicate put a price on his head. Not once in his entire life. Isabella flinched at the mention of their father. Murdered. Such a clean word for such a bloody end. She remembered the phone call, Dominic's voice flat and cold telling her Papa was gone. She remembered asking how, and the silence that followed. The silence that told her everything she needed to know. She had been 14. Dominic had been 18. And from that day forward, he had become something else entirely. Miss Valentino. Dr. Chen turned to her. As his next of kin, the final decision rests with you. We can continue life support indefinitely, but I must be honest about what that means. His body will continue to deteriorate. The machines will keep his organs functioning, but the man you knew, she hesitated. There's no evidence he's still there. Isabella closed her eyes. She saw Dominic at 16, his lips split and bleeding, standing over their unconscious father who had finally swung one too many times. She saw him at 20, working double shifts at the warehouse, sliding money under her door for textbooks she pretended she didn't know came from him. She saw him at 24, the day she walked into his office unannounced and found him washing blood from his hands. "What did you do?" she had whispered. He hadn't answered. He never answered. She had left that night, packed one bag and vanished into a life he couldn't follow. Medical school, residency, a career built on saving lives, as if she could somehow balance the scales her brother kept tipping toward darkness. 8 years of silence. And now this. 72 hours, Isabella said finally, her voice hollow. "We give him 72 more hours. If there's no change." She couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I'll inform the staff." The meeting dissolved into murmurs and shuffling papers. No one noticed Elena Martinez in the hallway outside, her cleaning cart frozen mid-push, her face pale as she absorbed the words that had drifted through the cracked door. 72 hours. The man in room 47, the man she had talked to every night for 3 weeks, had 72 hours left to live. Elena didn't know about the Empire, didn't know about the blood or the bodies or the fear. To her, Dominic Valentino was simply the lonely man in the coma, the man whose hand never received visitors who held it, the man she told stories to because her grandmother had taught her that dying in silence was the cruelest fate of all. That evening, she stayed longer than usual. The room was quiet except for the machines, their steady beeping like a countdown she couldn't stop. Elena sat in the chair beside his bed, something she had never done before. Always she had stood, worked, moved, but tonight her legs refused to carry her away. "I heard what they said. Mr. Dominic," she whispered, her voice thick. 72 hours. That's all they're giving you." She looked at his face, young despite everything, with features that might have been handsome if they weren't so still. "I don't know who you are. I don't know what you did in your life, or who's waiting for you on the other side, but I know you're still in there somewhere. I can feel it." She reached out and touched his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his cold ones. "Please fight. Please come back. Someone out there needs you, even if you don't know who, even if you don't believe you deserve it." The monitors beeped on, unchanged. But Elena stayed until her shift ended, talking about stars and dreams, and a little girl who counted to 10 every night, filling the silence with the only thing she had to give: hope. The fever came at 4 a.m., like a thief in the night. Elena woke to the sound of Lily's coughing, a dry rattling sound that sent ice through her veins. She was out of bed before her eyes fully opened, her hands finding her daughter's forehead in the darkness. The heat radiating from that small body made her stomach drop. "Mama," Lily whimpered, her voice thin and reedy. "Mama, I'm cold. I know, mi amor. I know." Elena pulled the blanket tighter around her daughter's trembling frame. "Mama's here. Mama's got you." The next hours blurred into a haze of cool compresses and children's Tylenol scraped from the bottom of a nearly empty bottle. Elena held Lily against her chest, rocking her through the coughing fits, singing the lullabies her grandmother had sung to her decades ago in Puerto Rico. By the time gray light began seeping through the thin curtains of their studio apartment, Lily had finally fallen into a fitful sleep, but Elena's nightmare was just beginning. Her phone buzzed with texts from her supervisor. Sunday shift, double pay. The hospital was short-staffed due to a flu outbreak among the cleaning crew. They needed her. The messages grew more insistent with each passing hour. Double pay. Elena stared at the words until they blurred. Double pay meant catching up on the electricity bill before they shut it off. Double pay meant actual groceries instead of rice and beans stretched across the week. Double pay meant maybe, finally, replacing Lily's shoes that were one size too small, the ones her daughter never complained about because even at 4 years old, she understood that some things they simply couldn't afford. But Lily was sick, burning with fever, needed her mother. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter and felt her heart crack down the middle. She called Mrs. Kim, the elderly Korean woman from downstairs who sometimes watched Lily for free. No answer. Of course not. Mrs. Kim had mentioned visiting her grandchildren in Queens this weekend. Elena called the daycare center, hoping irrationally that someone would be there on a Sunday. Nothing. She scrolled through every contact in her phone. Anyone who might help. Former coworkers, distant acquaintances, the woman from church who had once offered to babysit. No one answered. No one ever answered. The free clinic wouldn't open until Monday, and bringing a sick child to a hospital where Elena worked, where patients with compromised immune systems filled every floor, seemed almost cruel, against every regulation, grounds for immediate termination. But missing the shift meant losing the money. Losing the money meant missing rent. Missing rent meant the street, the shelter, The system that would look at her empty bank account and her exhausted face and decide that maybe Lily would be better off somewhere else. Elena had heard the stories. She had seen the mothers who lost everything because one domino fell at the wrong time. At 6 a.m., she made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. She dressed Lily in her warmest pajamas, the pink ones with the faded stars that had been washed so many times they were soft as clouds. She packed a small bag with her daughter's favorite blanket, the one with the fraying edges that smelled like home, crackers, juice boxes, the last of the fever medicine, and Stella, the stuffed star that Lily carried everywhere, the one Elena had found at a thrift store for 50 cents and watched become her daughter's most treasured possession. Lily stirred as Elena lifted her. "Mama, where are we going?" "Mama has to work, mi amor." Elena kissed her forehead. "Still too warm, but better than before. You're going to come with me today. Just this once. You'll sleep, and Mama will be right there. I promise." Lily's small arms wrapped around her mother's neck. "Okay, Mama. Stella comes too?" "Stella comes too." The subway at 7 a.m. on a Sunday was nearly empty. Elena sat in the corner of the car, Lily curled against her chest. Stella clutched between them. The train rattled through the darkness beneath New York, carrying them toward Manhattan, toward the hospital, toward a fate none of them could have predicted. Elena stared at her reflection in the black window, a tired woman, a desperate mother, a person who had followed every rule, worked every job, sacrificed every comfort, and still found herself here. Choosing between her child's health and keeping a roof over their heads. This was America, she thought bitterly, the richest country in the world, the land of opportunity, the place her parents had dreamed of when they saved for years to send her here. And yet here she was, a mother forced to bring her sick daughter to work because the alternative was losing everything. Lily shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about stars. Elena held her tighter and prayed to every saint her grandmother had ever taught her about. "Let this work. Let us survive this day. Let me keep my daughter safe." The train pulled into the Manhattan station. Their destiny awaited. Elena slipped through the service entrance at 7:45 a.m., her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The corridors here were empty on Sunday mornings, used only by maintenance staff and cleaning crews who preferred the back routes that visitors never saw. She clutched Lily against her chest, the small body warm and heavy with sleep. 15 more steps to the elevator. 10 more. 5. Elena. The voice froze her mid-stride. Janice Morrison stood at the end of the hallway, clipboard in hand, reading glasses perched on her nose. The shift supervisor, 23 years at Mount Sinai, eyes that missed nothing. Elena turned slowly, Lily's face buried against her shoulder. There was no hiding what she had done, no excuse that would explain a 4-year-old in a hospital service corridor at 8 in the morning. Janice's gaze dropped to the child, then rose to meet Elena's terrified eyes. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. "She's sick," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "Fever all night. I had no one. Mrs. Kim is in Queens. The daycare is closed. I called everyone. Janice. Everyone." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. "I needed the hours. I needed the double pay. I had no choice." Janice's expression remained unreadable. She had been a supervisor long enough to fire people for less, bringing unauthorized persons into patient areas, endangering hospital protocols, violations that looked clean on paper and devastating in real life. But Janice Morrison had also been a single mother once, 22 years old with a colicky baby and a husband who had walked out 3 weeks after the birth. She remembered the impossible arithmetic of survival, the choices that weren't really choices at all. She remembered. "The break room on this floor," Janice said quietly. "The small one by the supply closet. No one uses it on Sundays." She glanced down the hallway, checking for witnesses. Nowhere else. "If administration sees her, I don't know anything. We never had this conversation." Elena's knees nearly buckled with relief. Thank you so much. I swear she'll just sleep. She won't be any trouble. I'll check on her every 15 minutes. I'll work twice as fast. You won't even know she's here." Janice nodded once, then walked past her as if nothing had happened. "Room 47 needs extra attention today," she said over her shoulder. Her voice returned to its professional flatness. "Family meeting didn't go well. Make sure everything is spotless." Elena didn't waste another second. The break room was small, barely larger than a closet, with a worn couch shoved against one wall and a coffee maker that had seen better decades. But it had a door that closed and a lock that worked, and right now that made it a sanctuary. She laid Lily on the couch, tucking the blanket around her small body. The fever had broken slightly, and her daughter's breathing had eased into the steady rhythm of deep sleep. Elena placed Stella, the stuffed star, beside her, positioning the toy so it would be the first thing Lily saw if she woke. "Mama's right outside, mi amor," Elena whispered, pressing her lips to Lily's forehead. "Right outside this door, working. I'll come back every 15 minutes, I promise. You just sleep and feel better, okay? Stella will keep you safe." Lily murmured something unintelligible and curled tighter around her star. Elena backed out of the room, leaving the door cracked just enough to hear if Lily called out. Then she grabbed her cleaning cart and began working at a pace that would have impressed marathon runners. Room after room, mop, wipe, sanitize, move. Every 15 minutes, she abandoned her cart and sprinted back to the break room. Every 15 minutes, she found Lily exactly as she had left her, sleeping peacefully, Stella tucked under her chin. 2 hours passed. 2 hours of frantic work and breathless check-ins. 2 hours of Elena's heart rate spiking every time she pushed open that break room door, then flooding with relief when she saw her daughter's small form still curled on the couch. The plan was working. The fever was down. Lily was safe. Elena allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. At 1 p.m., she was 3 rooms away from room 47, mopping the floor with mechanical efficiency, her mind already calculating the minutes until her next check-in. 4 minutes. She would finish this room in 4 minutes, then go to Lily, then continue with the VIP wing. The intercom on the wall crackled to life. Janice's voice came through, stripped of its usual composure, sharp with a panic Elena had never heard from her. "Elena, come to the break room now." The mop clattered to the floor. "The child is gone. Lily is not here." For one eternal second, Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the words that had just shattered her entire world. Then she ran. Elena ran like the floor was on fire. She burst into the break room to find Janice standing over the empty couch. The blanket crumpled. Lily's juice box spilled across the cushion. But no Lily. No Stella. No sign of her daughter except the indent in the fabric where her small body had been. "Lily," Elena screamed, her voice tearing from her throat. "Lily!" She spun around, checking behind the couch, under the coffee table, inside the small supply cabinet. Nothing. Nothing. Her daughter had vanished like smoke. "I checked 10 minutes ago," Janice said, her face pale. "She was sleeping. I came back to bring her some crackers and she was just gone." Elena didn't hear her. She was already running. The hallway stretched before her like a nightmare. Doors multiplying, shadows deepening. She threw open every room she passed, calling Lily's name until her voice cracked and broke. "Lily! Lily! Where are you?" Security was summoned. 2 guards arrived within minutes, radios crackling with urgent codes. The floor went into lockdown. No one in, no one out. Elevators frozen. Stairwell doors monitored. Elena checked under beds, inside closets, behind curtains, in bathrooms where the lights flickered and the tiles echoed her desperate cries. Her mind spiraled into darkness. Windows. What if she climbed on something and fell? Stairs. What if she found the service stairwell? Strangers. What if someone took her? What if right now, right this second, someone was carrying her daughter out of the building and she would never see her again? "Ma'am, please try to stay calm," a nurse said, reaching for her arm. "She's only 4. She probably just woke up confused and went looking for you. You don't understand." Elena pulled away, her eyes wild. "She's sick. She has a fever. She doesn't know this place. She's scared of strangers and loud noises," and her voice dissolved into sobs. Other staff members joined the search. They fanned out across the floor, checking every corner, every shadow, every space large enough to hide a small child. But the floor was vast, a labyrinth of corridors and private rooms and restricted areas. Restricted areas. Elena's blood went cold. "The VIP wing," she breathed. "Has anyone checked the VIP wing?" "That section is secured," a guard said. "Badge access only." The door was propped open earlier. A young orderly interrupted. He was pushing an equipment cart, his face nervous. Someone was moving monitors around. "I saw it about 20 minutes ago. The door was wedged with a doorstop. 20 minutes. Lily had been missing for at least 15. Elena didn't wait for permission. She ran toward the VIP corridor, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, her heart slamming against her ribs with enough force to crack bone. The double doors loomed ahead, the ones that separated ordinary patients from those who could afford privacy and silence and round-the-clock care. The doors that led to room 47. To Dominic Valentino, she burst through, ignoring the shouts behind her. The corridor here was quieter, more elegant, with soft lighting and artwork on the walls. Each room was a suite, sealed behind thick doors with small windows at eye level. Elena checked the first room. Empty. The second. An elderly woman sleeping. The third. A man with bandages on his face. She reached room 47 and looked through the window. Her heart stopped. The world stopped. Inside the room, bathed in the soft glow of monitor screens, her 4-year-old daughter was climbing onto the hospital bed. Lily had pushed a chair against the side of the mattress and was using it as a step, her small hands gripping the sheets, her legs scrambling for purchase. Stella the stuffed star dangled from her mouth, clenched between her teeth so her hands could be free. And on the bed, connected to a dozen machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical life, Dominic Valentino lay motionless, unaware, dying. "No," Elena whispered. Lily reached the top. She crawled across the mattress with the determined focus of a child on a mission. And then, as Elena watched in frozen horror, her daughter curled up on the man's chest, laid her head against his shoulder, tucked Stella between them, and closed her eyes, as if she belonged there, as if she had found exactly what she was looking for. "Lily!" Elena slammed her palm against the door's access panel. "No!" But she was too late. Her daughter was already asleep on the chest of a dying stranger, and somewhere in the depths of his coma, Dominic Valentino's monitors began to change. The door finally yielded to Elena's frantic swiping, the access panel beeping its approval a lifetime too late. She burst into the room, Lily's name already on her lips, ready to snatch her daughter from the bed and run. Run from the consequences. Run from the termination that was surely coming. Run from whatever disaster her desperate choices had created. But the words died in her throat. Lily lay perfectly still on Dominic Valentino's chest. Her small head rested against his shoulder, dark curls spilling across the white hospital gown. Stella was tucked between them, the stuffed star's faded fabric pressed against the place where his heart still beat, her tiny hand curled in the fabric of his gown, gripping it the way she gripped Elena's shirt during thunderstorms. She was asleep, deeply, peacefully asleep, as if she had found the safest place in the world. Security guards pushed past Elena, their voices sharp with alarm. "Get the child off him! Now! Do you have any idea who this patient is? The liability if something happens, stop!" Elena's scream cut through the chaos. Everyone froze. She wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Dominic Valentino's face. For 3 weeks, she had talked to that face. For 3 weeks, she had memorized its stillness, its emptiness, the way it seemed carved from marble rather than flesh. She knew every line, every shadow, every hollow where life had retreated. Something was different. His brow, which had been smooth and slack, was now slightly furrowed, a crease between his eyebrows that hadn't been there before, and his lips, those colorless lips that had never moved in all the nights she had talked to him, were twitching, barely perceptible, but there. "Wait," Elena whispered, then louder, her voice rising with desperate hope. "Wait! Look at him! Look at his face!" The guards hesitated. One of them leaned closer, squinting at the patient. "What are we supposed to be? His eyebrows, his mouth. He's moving. He wasn't doing that before. He was never doing that before. Ma'am, patients in comas sometimes have involuntary page, Dr. Chen." Elena spun toward the nurse who had appeared in the doorway. "Page her now. Tell her something is happening. Tell her to come immediately." The nurse looked uncertain, but the raw conviction in Elena's voice left no room for argument. She reached for the intercom. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived in 4 minutes, out of breath from running. She pushed through the gathered crowd, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. A cleaning woman, security guards, a small child asleep on her dying patient's chest. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded. "Who let this child into?" Then she looked at the monitors. Her voice disappeared. The numbers on the screens were changing, not crashing, as she had expected, rising, strengthening, heart rate climbing from its sluggish baseline, blood pressure stabilizing, and the brain activity monitor, the one that had shown nothing but minimal stem function for 21 days, was spiking with patterns she hadn't seen since before the coma. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen breathed. She moved to the bedside, her hands shaking as she pulled out her pen light. She lifted Dominic's eyelid gently, careful not to disturb the sleeping child, and shone the light into his pupil. It contracted. "Oh my God." She checked the other eye. Same response. Stronger than yesterday, stronger than last week. "His brain activity," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's increased by 40% in the last few hours." She looked at Lily, then at Elena, then back at the monitors as if they were lying to her. That doesn't just happen. That's not medically possible. Should we remove the child?" a guard asked. For his safety? No. Dr. Chen's response was immediate. Absolute. No one touches her. Doctor, the protocols. I don't care about protocols. She stared at the monitors, watching the numbers climb like flowers turning toward an impossible sun. I don't know what's happening here. I can't explain it, but something about this child's presence is reaching him in a way nothing else has. Elena moved to the bedside, her hand reaching out to touch Lily's back. She could feel her daughter's steady breathing, the small warmth of her body, the flutter of her heartbeat. And beneath that, she could feel something else. Dominic Valentino's chest, rising and falling with slightly more strength than before, as if Lily's presence had reminded his body how to breathe on its own. Please, Elena whispered, not knowing who she was talking to. God, the universe, the man who lay dying beneath her daughter's weight. Please let this work. The monitors beeped their strange new rhythm, and in the silence that followed, Dr. Chen made a decision that would have gotten her laughed out of any medical conference in the country. Everyone out, she ordered. Everyone except the mother. And no one. She fixed each person with a stare that left no room for argument. No one removes that child until I say otherwise. She couldn't explain it by science, but she wasn't willing to risk it either. The Shadow King had 72 hours left to live, and a 4-year-old girl with a stuffed star was fighting for him in ways medicine never could. Word spread through Mount Sinai Hospital, like electricity through water. By evening, the hallway outside room 47 had become an impromptu gathering place. Nurses from other floors found excuses to walk past. Residents finishing their shifts lingered near the water fountain with suspicious frequency. Even maintenance workers discovered urgent repairs that needed attention in the VIP corridor. The miracle of room 47. A child sleeping on a dying man's chest. Brain activity rising from the dead. Science bowing to something it couldn't name. Nobody quite believed it. But nobody could look away either. Isabella Valentino arrived at 7 p.m., still in her scrubs from a shift at Columbia Presbyterian. She had received 6 phone calls in the past hour, each one more urgent than the last. Marco's voice cracking as he tried to explain the unexplainable. Dr. Chen's clinical tone struggling to contain her own disbelief. Nothing prepared her for what she saw through the window. Her brother, the man who had built an empire on fear and blood, the man she had loved and hated and abandoned, lay motionless on the white sheets, and curled on his chest like a sleeping kitten was a little girl in pink pajamas, a stuffed star clutched to her heart. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. I know, Marco said from behind her. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice rough. I know how it looks, but watch the monitors, Bella. Watch them. She watched. The numbers were climbing, not dramatically, not miraculously, but steadily, incrementally, like a man taking one small step after another up an endless staircase. He's fighting, Marco whispered. I told them. I told everyone. Dominic Valentino does not give up. Isabella said nothing. She stood at the window for a long time, watching her brother's chest rise and fall beneath the weight of a stranger's child, and wondered if God was playing some cosmic joke that only he understood. Inside the room, Elena sat in the chair beside the bed. She had been there for hours now, her hand resting on Lily's back, feeling her daughter's breathing synchronize with the man beneath her. Her other hand lay gently on Dominic's arm, a human bridge connecting the three of them. The night nurse, a grandmother named Dorothy, had brought blankets and pillows. Get some rest, honey, she urged. I'll watch them both. I can't sleep, Elena said, though her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. Then at least close your eyes. You've been through enough today. But Elena couldn't close her eyes. She couldn't stop watching Lily's small form rising and falling with each of Dominic's breaths. She couldn't stop wondering what strange force had drawn her daughter to this room, to this man, to this moment. I don't know if you can hear me, she whispered into the darkness. Lily is here. I'm here. We're not going anywhere. Whatever you're fighting through, wherever you are, you're not alone anymore. Deep in the gray void of his coma, Dominic Valentino drifted. For weeks, he had been lost in fog. No up, no down, no light, no shadow. Just endless nothing stretching in every direction, pulling him further from everything he had ever known. But now there was something else. A warmth on his chest, small and steady and impossibly real. A heartbeat that wasn't his own, drumming against his ribs like a message in code. And a voice. The voice he had clung to in the darkness. The voice that talked about stars and dreams and a little girl who counted to 10 every night. The voice was closer now. A memory surfaced, unbidden from the depths of his shattered mind. His mother, Maria, before the bullets found her during the gang war that had consumed his childhood. She used to hold him through the nightmares. used to press him against her chest and sing in Italian until the monsters retreated. The weight on his chest felt exactly like that. Safe, protected, loved. He wanted to wake up. For the first time since the bullets had torn through his body, Dominic Valentino wanted desperately to open his eyes. At 3 a.m., his fingers twitched. Elena didn't notice. She had finally surrendered to exhaustion, her head resting on the edge of his mattress, her hand still touching his arm. At 5 a.m., his breathing pattern changed. Deeper, stronger. The ventilator adjusted automatically, sensing the shift. Dorothy noticed and paged Dr. Chen, who arrived in her pajamas with a coat thrown over them, her hair wild from sleep. At 6 a.m., the first light of dawn began seeping through the window, painting the room in shades of gold and rose. Elena slept on, dreaming of stars. Lily murmured something in her sleep and burrowed deeper into Dominic's chest. And beneath her, the man who had been declared dead opened his eyes. Gray eyes, steel eyes, eyes that had watched men die and empires fall. Now they stared at the ceiling of a hospital room, then slowly, painfully, traveled down to the small dark head resting over his heart. A child was sleeping on his chest. Dominic Valentino, the Shadow King, the man who had not cried since his mother's funeral, felt something hot and unfamiliar slide down his cheek. The monitors sang their triumphant song, but no one heard it yet. The miracle was still a secret between a dying man and the little girl who had refused to let him go. Morning light flooded through the window, painting the room in shades of gold that seemed too bright for a place that had held so much darkness. "Mama?" Lily's voice was small and clear, cutting through the silence like a bell. Elena's eyes flew open. She had fallen asleep with her head on the edge of the mattress, her neck stiff, her hand still resting on Dominic's arm. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then everything crashed back. The fever, the hospital, Lily disappearing, the impossible scene she had witnessed through the window. She looked up and froze. Dominic Valentino was awake. His eyes were open, gray as winter storms, staring down at the small body curled on his chest with an expression Elena had never seen on another human being. Not confusion, not fear, something deeper, something that looked almost like wonder. Lily had pushed herself up on her elbows and was gazing at him with the fearless curiosity of a child who had not yet learned that some people were dangerous. Her dark curls tumbled around her face. Stella dangled from one hand. "Hi," Lily said. Dominic's lips moved. No sound came out. 3 weeks of silence had stolen his voice. He tried again. "Hello." The words scraped out like sandpaper on stone. "Little one." His hand, trembling with the effort of muscles too long unused, slowly rose from the mattress. Elena watched as if in a dream as those fingers that had signed death warrants and built empires, gently touched her daughter's back. Exactly the way Elena did when Lily had nightmares. Exactly the way a parent comforts a child. "You're warm," Lily announced. "You were cold before. I made you warm." Something flickered across Dominic's face. His eyes moved from Lily to Elena, still frozen in her chair, and the connection between them crackled like lightning. Then the door burst open. Dr. Chen rushed in, still in the clothes she had thrown on hours ago, her hair escaping its hasty ponytail. Behind her came a flood of specialists, nurses, technicians with portable equipment. The room that had been so quiet moments before exploded into controlled chaos. "Mr. Valentino, can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" Pupil response normal. Reflexes responding. "Someone get a neurologist up here now." Blood pressure stabilizing. Heart rate elevated but strong. Through it all, Elena heard another sound. A choked sob from the corner of the room. Marco stood there, his massive shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his face without shame. 15 years of loyalty. 15 years of believing in a man everyone else had given up on. He had been right. A nurse gently lifted Lily from Dominic's chest, and the little girl immediately began to protest. "No, I want to stay. He needs me." "Sweetheart, the doctors need to check on him. But I'm helping. I was helping him wake up." Elena moved instinctively, gathering Lily into her arms. Her daughter squirmed and reached back toward the bed, toward the stranger who had somehow become important to her in ways neither of them understood. "Mr. Valentino." Dr. Chen leaned over him, penlight in hand. "Can you tell me your name?" "Dominic." His voice was raw, each word an effort. "Valentino. Do you know where you are?" "Hospital." His eyes scanned the room, taking in the monitors, the equipment, the crowd of medical professionals staring at him like he had risen from the grave. Which, in a way, he had. "I was shot." "That's right. You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. Do you remember the child?" His words silenced the room. Dominic's gaze had found Lily again, still struggling in Elena's arms, still reaching for him with her small hands. "The child," he repeated, his voice gaining strength with each word. "She was in my dreams. There were stars. Someone was talking about stars, counting them, his brow furrowed with the effort of remembering. 1 Stella, 2 Stella, 3 Stella. Elena's heart stopped. Those were her words. The words she had whispered to him night after night, never knowing if he could hear. And a voice, Dominic continued, his eyes moving to Elena, locking onto her, seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. A woman's voice. She talked to me every night, about a little girl who dreams of seeing 1,000,000 stars. The room had gone completely silent. Every doctor, every nurse, every specialist stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold before them. "That's my mama," Lily announced proudly. "She talks to everyone. She says it's rude not to." Dominic's cracked lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Your mama," he said slowly, "saved my life." Elena stood in the corner of the room, clutching her daughter, feeling the weight of those gray eyes on her. The Shadow King, the man who ruled the underworld, had just woken from the dead, and the first thing he remembered was her voice. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of tests, scans, and examinations. Dominic was wheeled from one department to another, poked and prodded by specialists who studied him like a specimen under glass. CT scans, MRIs, neurological assessments, blood work, reflex tests, memory evaluations. The results defied everything medical science understood about comas. Dr. Chen stood in the hallway with her colleagues, flipping through pages of data that made no sense. "There's no brain damage," she said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "None. The swelling has completely resolved. Cognitive function appears intact. Motor skills are weak but recovering rapidly." "That's impossible," another neurologist argued. "He had minimal brain activity for 3 weeks. The scans showed I know what the scans showed." Dr. Chen cut him off. "I read them myself, and I'm telling you, it's as if the coma was just..." She searched for words that didn't exist. "Sleep. Like he was simply sleeping for 21 days. No one could explain it. No one even tried." By afternoon, Dominic was back in room 47, propped up against pillows, a tray of untouched food beside him. He had refused pain medication, refused sedatives. His mind needed to be clear. There were answers he needed to find. "I want to see her," he said. His voice was still rough but stronger now. "The woman with the child. Elena." Marco stepped forward from his post by the door. "Boss, we need to be careful. We don't know who she is. She could be working for Kozlov. This whole thing could be a setup. Dominic's eyes, those cold gray eyes that had made men confess to crimes they hadn't committed, fixed on his lieutenant. "She talks to coma patients because her grandmother told her souls get lonely. She brings her sick daughter to work because she can't afford childcare. And you think Viktor Kozlov recruited her to, what, sing me lullabies until I wake up?" Marco's jaw tightened. "I'm just saying, if she wanted me dead, she had 3 weeks to do it. Every night, alone in this room, with no one watching." Dominic's voice softened slightly. "She chose to talk to me instead. Bring her in." Marco hesitated, then nodded and left. 5 minutes later, Elena stepped through the door. Lily was in her arms, freshly washed and wearing clean clothes that one of the nurses had found in the pediatric donation bin. The little girl's fever had broken completely, as if saving a stranger's life had healed her too. "Hi," Lily waved enthusiastically. "You're sitting up. That's good. Mama said you were very sick." Dominic studied them. A woman in a cleaning uniform, worn at the elbows, faded at the knees, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry, eyes that held exhaustion and worry but no calculation, no hidden agenda, no fear. And the child, bright-eyed and fearless, clutching a stuffed star that had seen better years, looking at him like he was just another person in her small world. No one had looked at Dominic Valentino like that in decades. "Your name," he said. "Tell me your name." "Elena Martinez. You talked to me. Every night for 3 weeks." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. "Yes. I didn't know if you could hear me. The doctor said probably not, but my grandmother always taught me." She trailed off, suddenly self-conscious, "that the soul hears what the body cannot." Dominic finished the sentence, watching her eyes widen. "You said that. More than once. I heard it every time. You heard me?" Fragments. Pieces. Like trying to catch rain in my hands. His gaze moved to Lily. "I heard about the stars. About counting to 10. About a little girl who wants to see 1,000,000 of them. Lily perked up at this. That's me. I'm the little girl. She squirmed in Elena's arms until her mother set her down, then toddled toward the bed with absolute confidence. I count stars every night. 1 Stella, 2 Stella, 3 Stella. Stella, Dominic repeated. The word felt strange on his tongue. Soft. Star. That's my star. Lily held up the stuffed toy proudly. Her name is Stella too. She's my best friend. She kept you safe when I was sleeping on you. Dominic looked at the worn stuffed toy. Its yellow fabric faded, one of its points slightly torn. He thought of the weapons he had owned, the property, the cars, the art. Nothing in his empire was as precious as this small object clutched in a child's hands. Stella, Lily said suddenly, pointing toward the window where the morning star still clung to the brightening sky. Look, there's a Stella, the last one before daytime. Both adults turned to look. A single point of light, barely visible against the encroaching dawn. Stubborn, persistent, refusing to disappear even as the sun rose to claim the sky. Lily turned back to Dominic, her face serious. Lily told you about stars when you were sleeping. You liked them. I could tell. Dominic Valentino had ordered men killed without flinching. He had watched enemies beg for mercy and felt nothing. He had built an empire on blood and never lost a moment's sleep. Now, looking at a 4-year-old girl who spoke of stars with such earnest conviction, he felt his throat close up. Yes, he managed. I liked them very much. Elena watched from the doorway, her heart pounding. The most dangerous man on the East Coast was looking at her daughter like she had given him something precious. And she had no idea what came next. The door opened, just as Elena and Lily disappeared around the corner of the hallway. Isabella stood in the doorway, still in her white coat, her hospital badge catching the afternoon light. She had watched the cleaning woman and her daughter leave, had waited in the corridor until they were out of sight, gathering the courage she had spent 8 years burying. Now there was nothing left between her and the brother she had abandoned. So you came, Dominic said. His voice was neutral, guarded, the same tone he used in negotiations where showing emotion meant showing weakness. I'm a doctor. Isabella stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I have an obligation. Obligation. The word hung in the air like smoke. Not because I'm your brother. Isabella flinched. She had expected anger, maybe. Coldness, certainly. But the flatness in his voice was worse. It spoke of acceptance, of a man who had made peace with being unloved by the only family he had left. She opened her mouth to respond, but what came out instead was a sound she hadn't made in years. A sob, raw and broken, tearing from somewhere deep inside her chest. I thought you were going to die. The words tumbled out between gasps. I thought I would have to spend the rest of my life knowing I refused to see you for 8 years, that you would die thinking I hated you, that I would never get to tell you, her voice cracked, that I still love you, that I never stopped. Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, painfully, he opened his arms. It was a small gesture. His muscles were still weak, his movement limited, but the meaning was unmistakable. Isabella crossed the room in 3 steps and fell into her brother's embrace. She was 14 again, hiding behind his back while their father raged, crying into his shoulder after their mother's funeral, holding his hand in the back of the church while strangers spoke empty words about Maria Valentino, beloved wife and mother, taken too soon. I'm sorry, Dominic whispered into her hair, for everything, for making you choose between me and your conscience. You killed him. Isabella's voice was muffled against his hospital gown. Tommaso. You killed him for what he did to Sofia. Yes, he raped her, murdered her, left her body in an alley like garbage. Yes, his father was your ally. Killing him started a war that lasted 2 years. I would do it again. Dominic's arms tightened around her. 1,000 times. He hurt someone you loved. The alliance meant nothing compared to that. Isabella pulled back, tears streaming down her face. That's exactly the problem, Dom. You solve everything with blood. You always have. And I couldn't. She shook her head. I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't be part of it. I know. He reached up, his hand trembling with effort, and wiped a tear from her cheek. I never blamed you for leaving. I blamed myself for giving you a reason to. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of 8 years pressing down on them. Then, slowly, they began to talk about their mother, who had sung Italian lullabies and made Sunday dinners that filled their tiny apartment with warmth, about their father, whose rage had stolen their childhood and whose death had set Dominic on the path to becoming what he was, about the empire built on fear and the price it had cost them both. And then Dominic told her about Elena. She talked to me every night, he said, his gaze distant. I was drowning in darkness. Her voice was the only light. She told me about her daughter, about stars, about dreams, small things, real things. No one else did that, Bella. Everyone else talked about me like I wasn't there. Or they didn't come at all. Isabella listened, watching her brother's face soften in ways she had never seen. And the child, Dominic continued. When she climbed onto my chest, he paused, struggling for words. It felt like Mama, like being held through a nightmare, like being safe. You loved Mama more than anything. She was the only person who ever made me feel like I deserved to be loved. His voice dropped. Until yesterday. Isabella reached out and took his hand. You're different. I can see it. Something in your eyes has changed. Dominic turned to look out the window. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the Manhattan skyline in shades of amber and rose. Nearly dying changes a person, he said quietly, but being pulled back from death by a 4-year-old who thinks you're worth saving. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough. That changes you more. Isabella squeezed his hand. For the first time in 8 years, she felt like she had her brother back. Not the Shadow King, not the man who ruled through fear, just Dominic, just her brother. And maybe, she thought, that was enough. The summons came the next morning. Elena had just clocked in for her shift when a security guard appeared at her elbow. Miss Martinez, Human Resources wants to see you. 3rd floor. Immediately, the walk to the HR office felt like a march to the gallows. She knew what was coming. Had known since the moment Lily climbed onto that hospital bed. Rules existed for reasons. She had broken every one of them. The HR director was a thin woman with steel gray hair and glasses that magnified her disapproving stare. Beside her sat a hospital administrator and a lawyer whose presence told Elena everything she needed to know. Miss Martinez. The director's voice was crisp and clinical. You are aware of why you've been called here? Yes, ma'am. Let me enumerate the violations for the record. She lifted a printed document, bringing an unauthorized minor into patient care areas, leaving said minor unsupervised in a staff break room, allowing the minor to enter a restricted VIP ward, allowing the minor to make physical contact with a critically ill patient, entering a patient's room outside your designated work duties. She set the paper down. Each of these is grounds for immediate termination. Elena's hands trembled at her sides. I understand. Furthermore, the hospital's legal team is evaluating potential criminal charges, reckless endangerment, trespassing, negligence. The words hit Elena like physical blows. Criminal charges. A record. What would happen to Lily if she went to jail? You are suspended indefinitely pending investigation, the director continued. Your badge and access cards must be surrendered before you leave the building. You are not permitted to return to hospital grounds until further notice. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Do you have anything to say in your defense? What could she say? That she had been desperate? That the system had failed her? That she had done what any mother would do when faced with impossible choices? No, ma'am, Elena whispered. I have nothing to say. She surrendered her badge and walked out of the office on legs that felt like water. Lily was waiting in the lobby with the nurse who had volunteered to watch her. The little girl's face lit up when she saw her mother, then crumpled when she noticed Elena's expression. Mama, what's wrong? Elena scooped her daughter into her arms and held her tight, burying her face in Lily's dark curls. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of her child. But the tears came anyway. She carried Lily to the staff locker room to collect her things. The whispers started before she even opened the door. That's her. The one who, can you believe the nerve? Using her kid to get close to a billionaire. I heard she's planning to sue. Emotional distress or something. Gold digger. Classic gold digger. Elena kept her head down, stuffing her spare uniform and personal items into her bag. The voices continued, louder now that they knew she could hear. Probably not even her real kid. Probably borrowed her from someone. Smart move, though. Find a rich guy in a coma. Make yourself the hero. Elena's hands shook as she closed her locker. She wanted to scream at them. Wanted to explain that she hadn't known who Dominic Valentino was. That she had only ever seen a lonely man in a bed. That she had talked to him out of compassion, not calculation. But what was the point? They had already decided who she was. Mama. Lily tugged at her sleeve. Mama, why are those ladies being mean? They're not being mean, mi amor. The lie tasted like ash. They're just talking. She shouldered her bag and headed for the exit. Just a few more steps. Through the door, down the elevator, out of this place forever. Mama, wait. Lily pointed down the hallway toward the VIP wing. Lily wants to see Dom. He's all alone. He'll be sad if Lily doesn't say goodbye. Elena knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes. Baby, we can't. Mama isn't allowed to go there anymore. We have to leave. But Dom needs us. I know, sweetheart. I know. But sometimes, her voice cracked. Sometimes we can't help the people we want to help. Sometimes we just have to go. Lily's lower lip trembled. That's not fair. No, Elena thought. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Not the poverty. Not the impossible choices. Not the punishment for showing kindness in a world that seemed to reward cruelty. She stood and took Lily's hand, turning toward the elevator. Miss Martinez. The voice came from behind her. Deep, commanding, familiar. Elena turned. Marco stood in the corridor, his massive frame blocking the light. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something that looked almost like respect. Mr. Valentino wants to see you, he said. Both of you, now. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And something in his tone told Elena that refusing wasn't an option. Marco led them through the VIP corridor in silence. Elena's mind raced with every step. What did Dominic Valentino want? Had he heard about her suspension? Was he angry that she had brought Lily into his room? Was he going to make things worse? The door to room 47 swung open. Dominic was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows, looking stronger than he had just 24 hours ago. Color had returned to his face. His eyes were alert, focused, alive. An IV still ran into his arm, and monitors still beeped their steady rhythm. But the man in the bed was no longer dying. He was healing. Dom! Lily broke free from Elena's grip and ran toward the bed, her small feet pattering against the floor. You're sitting up. You're getting better. Dominic watched her approach with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. Wonder, maybe. Or something softer. Something that looked almost like tenderness. Thanks to you, little one, he said. His voice was still rough, but warmer than before. You fixed me. Lily beamed with pride. Mama says I give the best hugs. Hugs make everything better. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in decades, Dominic Valentino smiled. Not the cold smile of business negotiations, not the dangerous smile that preceded violence. A real smile, one that reached his eyes and transformed his face into something almost gentle. Then his gaze shifted to Elena, and the smile faded into something more serious. You were fired, he said. Because of me. Elena straightened her spine. She would not grovel, would not make excuses. I was fired because of decisions I made. Bringing Lily here, breaking the rules. That was my choice. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then he nodded, and Elena saw something flicker in his eyes. Respect. Marco, he said, not looking away from Elena. Get the hospital's legal counsel in here. Now. Marco pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. Mr. Valentino, Elena started. Dominic, he corrected. You've seen me at my worst. You've talked to me when I couldn't respond. I think we're past formalities. 10 minutes later, Jennifer Hartwell from the hospital's legal department rushed into the room, her heels clicking urgently against the floor. Behind her came the HR director, the same woman who had just suspended Elena, her face pale with confusion. Mr. Valentino, Jennifer began, slightly out of breath. We were told this was urgent. How can we? Sit down. Dominic's voice carried the weight of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Both women sat immediately. I want to make several things very clear, and I want them on record. He shifted slightly in the bed, wincing at the movement but refusing to show weakness. First, I am not filing any complaints against this hospital or its staff. No lawsuits, no legal action. The care I received was exceptional. Jennifer's shoulders relaxed slightly. Second, Dominic's eyes fixed on the HR director. Elena Martinez is to be reinstated immediately. Full back pay for any shifts missed. Her record is to be cleared of any disciplinary action. Any investigation into her conduct is to be closed with no findings of wrongdoing. The HR director's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Mr. Valentino, the protocols were designed for ordinary circumstances. This was not ordinary. His voice hardened. This woman's daughter saved my life. If you want to punish someone for a miracle, you'll have to explain that decision to the board, and to the press, and to me. Silence. Third, Dominic reached for a folder that Marco had placed on his bedside table. I am donating $2 million to Mount Sinai Hospital. The funds are to be used exclusively for the establishment of an emergency childcare facility for hospital employees, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free of charge. Jennifer's eyes went wide. The HR director looked like she might faint. No parent should ever have to choose between caring for their sick child and keeping their job, Dominic continued. This hospital failed Elena Martinez. This donation ensures it never fails anyone else the same way. He slid the folder dead toward Jennifer. The paperwork is ready. My lawyers have already reviewed it. All I need is your signature. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. Jennifer took the folder with trembling hands. I'll need to discuss this with administration. You'll sign it now, Dominic said. Or I'll take my donation and my future medical needs elsewhere, along with the medical needs of everyone in my organization, Jennifer signed. After they left, Elena stood frozen by the door, struggling to process what had just happened. Her job, her record, $2 million. A childcare center. You didn't have to do that, she finally said. I don't want to owe you. Dominic looked at her steadily. You gave me something money cannot buy. You gave me a reason to fight my way back. This isn't repaying a debt. He paused, his voice dropping. This is me trying to deserve what you gave me. Before Elena could respond, Lily scrambled onto the bed with practiced ease. She reached for Stella, her precious stuffed star, and pressed it into Dominic's hands. Here, she said solemnly. Stella protects me when I'm scared. Now she can protect you when Lily isn't here. Dominic looked down at the worn toy in his hands. The faded yellow fabric, the slightly torn point, the smell of childhood and innocence, and unconditional love. He looked up at Elena, standing by the door with tears streaming down her face. His throat closed up for the second time in 24 hours. Thank you, little one, he managed. I'll take very good care of her. Lily nodded approvingly and snuggled against his side. And Dominic Valentino, the Shadow King, held a stuffed star like it was the most valuable thing he had ever owned. Because, in that moment, it was 2 weeks passed like a fever dream. Dominic's recovery defied every medical prediction. Within days, he was walking the hallways with Marco's assistance. Within a week, he was attending physical therapy sessions that left his trainers exhausted while he pushed for more. The doctors ran test after test, searching for explanations that didn't exist. It's unprecedented, Dr. Chen told Isabella during one of their private consultations. His neural pathways are regenerating at a rate I've never seen. It's as if the coma reset something in his brain. I can't explain it scientifically. Isabella could. She had seen the way Dominic's face softened when Lily visited. She had watched him track Elena's movements across the room like she was the only fixed point in a spinning world. Some things couldn't be measured by machines. Elena returned to work as ordered, her badge restored, her record cleared. But the whispers followed her everywhere. That's her. The one who heard she's sleeping with him now. That's why he gave all that money. The kid probably isn't even hers. Rented her from somewhere to make the whole thing look innocent. She knew he was Mafia. Everyone knows. And she still went after him. Classic gold digger move. Find a rich man when he's vulnerable. Elena kept her head down and worked. She cleaned rooms and emptied trash and scrubbed floors, pretending she couldn't hear the conversations that stopped whenever she entered a room and resumed the moment she left. Then the reporters came. Hospital miracle. Child saves dying billionaire, screamed the headlines. Someone had leaked the story, and now camera crews camped outside Mount Sinai, hunting for interviews. Someone else had leaked Elena's address, and strangers showed up at her apartment building, shouting questions through her door. Miss Martinez, is it true you're in a relationship with Dominic Valentino? Elena, how much is he paying you to keep quiet? Is the child really yours? We have sources saying Elena stopped answering her door, stopped checking her mail, started taking Lily to work through the service entrance at 5 a.m. to avoid the cameras. The walls were closing in. That evening, she brought Lily to room 47 as usual. The visits had become routine now, sanctioned by hospital administration, looked forward to by all three of them. Dominic had a standing order for children's books to be delivered, and he spent hours reading to Lily while Elena sat nearby, pretending to read magazines while actually watching them together. But tonight, Elena couldn't pretend anymore. She made it through the door, made it through Lily's enthusiastic greeting, made it through watching her daughter climb onto the bed and demand her favorite story about the bear who counted stars. Then she broke. The tears came without warning, sudden and violent, sobs that shook her entire body. She pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to muffle the sound, but it was too late. Mama? Lily's voice was small and scared. Mama, why are you crying? Elena. Dominic's voice was sharp, concerned. What happened? I can't do this anymore. The words tore out of her. The whispers. The accusations. Everyone thinks I'm using you. Using Lily. They say I planned this. that I'm after your money, she choked on a sob. They leaked my address. Reporters are at my apartment. My neighbors look at me like I'm a criminal. Dominic's expression transformed. Elena had never seen him angry before. In all the weeks of knowing him, he had been weak, recovering, gentle with Lily, careful with her. But now his face hardened into something terrifying. His jaw clenched. His eyes went cold as steel. He reached for the plastic cup of water on his bedside table and squeezed. The cup crumpled in his fist, water spilling across the sheets. Who? The word was ice. Give me names. Every single person who said these things. The reporters who came to your home. The co-workers who spread lies. I want names. No! Elena shook her head violently. No, Dominic. You can't threaten them into silence. You can't buy their respect. These are my co-workers, my neighbors, my life. You can't fix this with money or fear. That's not, she gasped for breath. That's not how the real world works. The anger in his face flickered. Confusion replaced it. Then something else. Something vulnerable. Then what? His voice dropped. The hardness melted away, leaving only a man who didn't know how to help. What do you need from me, Elena? Not what I think you need. What do you actually need? Elena looked at him through her tears. This man who had built an empire on fear. This man who could order deaths with a phone call. This man who was looking at her like her answer mattered more than anything in his world. Lily had gone quiet on the bed, clutching Stella, watching her mother with wide, frightened eyes. I need to know what we are, Elena whispered. You and me, because people keep asking, and I don't have an answer. I don't know why you look at me the way you do. I don't know why my heart races when I'm near you. I don't know if I'm your charity case or your project or just the cleaning woman who talked to you while you were dying. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I need to know, Dominic, because I can't take not knowing anymore. The room fell silent. Lily looked between them, sensing something important happening. And Dominic Valentino, for the first time in his life, found himself completely lost for words. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Lily had fallen asleep on the small sofa in the corner of the room. Exhausted by the emotional weight she was too young to understand, Stella was tucked under her chin, her small chest rising and falling with the peaceful rhythm of childhood dreams. Two adults remained awake, facing each other across a distance that felt both impossibly vast and dangerously small. What are we? Elena repeated, her voice steadier now but still raw. You're the patient whose room I cleaned. Then you became the man I talked to in the darkness. Then you became the person who saved my job, who gave millions to help people like me. And now, she spread her hands helplessly. People ask me what you are to me, and I don't have an answer. Friend? Employer? Benefactor? What do I call this? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the monitors beside his bed, still tracking his heartbeat, still measuring the life that had almost slipped away. He looked at Lily sleeping on the sofa, clutching the stuffed star she had given him, and then taken back, and then given him again, a cycle of sharing that seemed to define their entire relationship. He looked at Elena, standing by the window with tears drying on her cheeks, waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he knew how to give. I don't know how to define it, he finally said. I've spent my life putting everything into categories. Allies, enemies, assets, threats. Everything had a label. Everything had a place. He paused. You don't fit any of them. Then what am I? I know what you're not. His voice grew firmer. You're not a mafia boss and a cleaning woman. We're not a debt being repaid. We're not a PR opportunity or a charity project or whatever the hell those reporters think they've figured out. Elena's brow furrowed. Then what are we? Dominic's eyes met hers. Two people who found each other in the darkness, he said slowly, as if discovering the words as he spoke them. Two people who pulled each other toward the light. His gaze drifted to Lily. Three people. Elena shook her head. I don't want to be your charity case. I don't want to be the poor single mother you rescued so you can feel good about yourself. I've worked too hard and sacrificed too much to become someone's project. You think I did all this to feel good about myself? Dominic laughed. It was a harsh sound, bitter and self-mocking, the first laugh Elena had heard from him since he woke. Elena, I've killed people. Many people. Some deserved it. Some probably didn't. I've built an empire on fear and blood and broken lives. No amount of charity donations will erase that. No number of childcare centers will balance those scales. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense. I don't do good things because they make me feel good. I don't even know what feeling good means anymore. Then why? Because of you. The words came out raw and unguarded. Because when I was drowning in darkness, your voice was the only thing that made me want to come back. Because when I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was a little girl who believed I was worth saving. He swallowed hard. You don't make me feel like a good person, Elena. You make me want to become one. Not to pretend. Not to perform. To actually become someone worthy of the way that child looks at me. Elena stared at him. In all her imaginings, she had never expected this. Not this honesty. Not this vulnerability. Not this powerful man laying himself bare before her like she held the power instead of him. I don't know what we are, Dominic continued quietly. But I know I don't want to stop finding out. Before Elena could respond, a small voice interrupted. Dom? Both adults turned. Lily was sitting up on the sofa, rubbing her eyes with one hand while the other clutched Stella. Her hair was mussed from sleep, and her expression carried the particular seriousness of a child who has woken up hungry. Lily's tummy is making noises, she announced. It says it wants food. The tension in the room dissolved like morning fog. Elena laughed, a watery sound caught between tears and relief. Dominic's face softened into something that looked almost like tenderness. Well, he said, we can't ignore a talking tummy. He pressed the call button beside his bed, then looked at Elena. The hospital kitchen sends up whatever I ask for. There are benefits to being the patient who donated a small fortune. A pause. Will you stay? For dinner? Both of you? Elena looked at her daughter, then at the man in the hospital bed, then at the window where the lights of Manhattan glittered like earthbound stars. Yes, she said softly. We'll stay. Lily cheered and scrambled off the sofa, climbing onto Dominic's bed with the ease of practice. She settled against his side like she belonged there. Stella positioned between them like a guardian. Can we have pizza? She asked hopefully. With extra cheese? Anything you want, little one. Elena pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. The three of them waited for dinner together, talking about nothing important, about everything that mattered. Lily chattered about the birds she had seen outside the window. Dominic asked questions like her answers were fascinating. Elena watched them both, feeling something warm unfurl in her chest. For the first time, the hospital room didn't feel like a place of death and waiting. It felt like a beginning. It felt like home. 3 weeks after opening his eyes, Dominic Valentino stood at the window of room 47, watching the sun set over Manhattan. He was dressed in real clothes for the first time since the shooting. Dark slacks, a gray sweater that hid the scars still healing beneath. His body had recovered with a speed that astonished his doctors and terrified his enemies. Tomorrow, he would be discharged. Tomorrow, he would walk out of this hospital and back into the world. But the world had not been waiting patiently. The door opened behind him. Marco entered with the particular heaviness that meant bad news. What is it? Dominic asked without turning. Kozlov knows you're alive. The name hung in the air like poison. Viktor Kozlov, the Russian who had ordered the hit. 4 bullets meant to end the Valentino Empire and redistribute its territories among hungry rivals. He knows more than that. Marco's voice was tight. He knows about the woman, about the child. Dominic turned slowly. How? Someone talked. One of the nurses, maybe. A staff member looking for a payout. Marco's jaw clenched. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that Kozlov sees them as leverage. He's already put people on Elena's building. Watching, waiting. The cold that spread through Dominic's chest had nothing to do with his healing wounds. Elena, Lily, the 2 people who had pulled him back from death. The 2 people who made him want to be something other than what he was. Kozlov would use them, hurt them, kill them if necessary, all to draw Dominic into a trap, all to finish what 4 bullets had started. We need to move them, Marco continued. Safe house upstate, armed guards, until we can deal with Kozlov permanently. Deal with. A euphemism they had both used 1,000 times. It meant war. It meant bodies. It meant becoming the Shadow King again, unleashing violence that would ripple through the underworld for years. Dominic walked to the bed and sat down heavily. 3 weeks ago, he would not have hesitated. 3 weeks ago, he would have already been making calls, assembling soldiers, planning the systematic destruction of everything Kozlov had ever built. But 3 weeks ago, he had not yet felt a child's heartbeat against his chest, had not heard Elena's voice pulling him back from the void, had not learned what it felt like to be looked at with trust instead of fear. No, Dominic said. Marco blinked. No, we're not handling this the old way. Dominic reached for his phone. Get me the number for the FBI field office in Manhattan. The silence that followed was absolute. Boss. Marco's voice was careful. You understand what you're saying. If you talk to the feds, I understand. You'll lose everything. The organization. The businesses. 20 years of work. I know. They might not even give you immunity. You could spend the rest of your life in prison. Dominic looked up at the man who had been his shadow for 15 years. And if I don't? If I go back to being what I was? I'll spend the rest of my life as a man Lily would be afraid of. A man Elena would be right to run from. He shook his head slowly. I already lost everything that mattered once. I was dead for 3 weeks, Marco. And none of it, not the money, not the power, none of it came with me into that darkness. The only thing that brought me back was a voice talking about stars. The door opened again. Isabella entered, her face pale. She had heard enough from the hallway to understand. Dom, you can't be serious. The FBI? You'll be giving up everything. Your empire, your freedom, everything you built. I didn't build anything worth keeping. Dominic's voice was quiet but certain. I built a kingdom of blood, Bella, and blood is all it will ever produce. He looked toward the door, where he could hear familiar footsteps approaching, small ones, moving quickly, larger ones following behind. Unless I stop it now. Elena appeared in the doorway, Lily already breaking free and running toward the bed. Dom, Mama said you get to leave tomorrow. Can we have a party? Can there be cake? Dominic opened his arms, and Lily launched herself into them. He lifted her easily, his body strong enough now to hold her weight without trembling. He looked at this child, this small, fierce, trusting child who had climbed onto his chest and refused to let him die, who looked at him and saw not a monster but a person worth saving. Lily, he said softly, can I promise you something? She tilted her head, curious. What? I'm going to become the person you think I am. A good person. Someone you can be proud of knowing. He swallowed hard. It might take a while, and it might be hard, but I'm going to try. Lily looked at him with the absolute certainty that only children possess. You're already good, Dom, she said, as if stating the most obvious fact in the world. Lily knew the first time you said hello. Your voice was nice. Nice voices mean nice people. That's what Mama says. Dominic pulled her closer, pressing his face into her dark curls to hide the tears he could not stop. Over her shoulder, he met Elena's eyes. She was standing in the doorway, watching, understanding. She had heard enough to know what he was about to do, what it would cost him. She nodded once, just once. It was enough. Dominic Valentino, the Shadow King, reached for his phone and dialed the number that would end his empire and save his soul. 2 months changed everything. The FBI deal had been brutal but fair. Dominic provided names, accounts, operations, and evidence accumulated over 2 decades of empire building. In return, he received immunity from prosecution, witness protection during the investigation, and a chance to start over. Viktor Kozlov never saw it coming. The raid happened on a Tuesday morning, coordinated across 7 states, involving 400 federal agents. The largest operation against Russian organized crime in American history, the newspapers called it. Kozlov was arrested in his Long Island mansion, still in his bathrobe, screaming threats in Russian as they led him away in handcuffs. He would spend the rest of his life in a federal supermax prison. The Valentino empire crumbled overnight. Associates scattered, properties were seized, bank accounts frozen, 20 years of blood and fear, dismantled in a matter of weeks. But Dominic had been careful. Among the darkness, he had always maintained legitimate businesses, real estate holdings bought with clean money, investment portfolios managed by reputable firms, enough to live comfortably for several lifetimes, enough to build something new. The Lily and Elena Foundation was announced on a crisp October morning. $50 million committed to a mission that would have seemed impossible just months before. Emergency child care centers for hospital workers across the country. Crisis funds for single parents facing impossible choices. Scholarships for children of healthcare employees. Mental health support for families living below the poverty line. Every program designed around a simple question. What would have helped Elena Martinez on the day she had no choice but to bring her sick daughter to work? Elena herself had refused the position of executive director 3 times. I don't know how to run a charity, she protested during the 3rd meeting, sitting across from Dominic in the conference room of his lawyer's office. I clean floors. I wait tables. I don't manage budgets and write grant proposals. You know what it's like to be desperate, Dominic replied. You know what it's like to face impossible choices with no good options. You know what families like yours actually need, not what wealthy donors think they need. He slid a folder across the table. We can hire accountants and administrators. We can't hire someone who understands. Elena stared at the folder. The salary listed inside would change her life, would change Lily's life. I'll mess it up, she whispered. Then we'll fix it together. She signed the contract that afternoon. Isabella joined as medical director, designing healthcare programs with the precision of a surgeon and the compassion of someone who had watched her brother nearly die. She built partnerships with hospitals across the Northeast, creating networks of support that would catch families before they fell. Marco's transition was the most surprising of all. The man who had spent 15 years as Dominic's enforcer now oversaw security for the Foundation's childcare centers. He trained staff in safety protocols. He installed monitoring systems. He made sure that every child who entered those facilities would be protected. "You're sure about this?" Marco had asked when Dominic offered him the position. "I'm not exactly qualified for legitimate work." "You spent 15 years keeping people safe," Dominic replied. "The people were just different. The skills are the same." The Foundation's headquarters occupied a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, chosen deliberately for its accessibility to the communities they served. The building had been gutted and rebuilt, filled with light and color and life. But the crown jewel was the mural. Local children had been invited to help paint one wall of the main lobby. For 3 weekends, kids from the neighborhood had gathered with brushes and rollers and buckets of paint, creating something that no professional artist could have matched. A night sky stretched across the entire wall, deep blues and purples swirling together like cosmic clouds. Stars scattered everywhere, some neat and precise, others wild splashes of yellow and white, and in the center, enormous golden moon, surrounded by handprints of every size and color. Lily stood before it now, pointing excitedly at a small yellow handprint positioned just beside the moon. "That's mine," she announced, bouncing on her toes. "That one right there. See? Lily's hand." Dominic knelt beside her, bringing himself to her level. His eyes traced the small print, the fingers spread wide, the paint slightly smeared where a 4-year-old had pressed too enthusiastically. "I see it," he said softly. "It's the most beautiful part of the whole mural. Because it's next to the moon," Lily explained seriously. "The moon is lonely up in the sky all by itself. Lily's hand keeps it company." Dominic felt his throat tighten. He thought of all the lonely nights in the darkness of his coma. He thought of Elena's voice, the only light in the void. He thought of a small body climbing onto his chest, a heartbeat against his heart, a child who had refused to let him drift away alone. "You're right," he managed. "Everyone needs company. Even the moon." Elena appeared beside them, her new badge clipped to a blazer she still wasn't comfortable wearing. She looked at the mural, at her daughter, at the man kneeling beside her. "Ready for the ribbon cutting?" she asked. Dominic stood, his hand finding Lily's automatically. "Ready," he said. And together, the 3 of them walked toward the front doors, where a crowd had gathered to witness the birth of something new, something good, something that would last. 4 months after Dominic Valentino opened his eyes, he kept the promise made in darkness. The cabin nestled deep in Vermont's Green Mountains, 3 hours from any city. When sunset faded, the stars emerged, first dozens, then hundreds, then thousands upon thousands, pouring across the sky like spilled diamonds. Lily had never seen anything like it. "Stella!" she screamed, running across the meadow in her pajamas. So many Stellas. "Mama, look! I can't count them all!" She spun in circles, arms outstretched, laughing with pure wonder. Dominic and Elena sat on the porch steps, a blanket shared between them, watching their little star dancer twirl beneath the infinite sky. "Do you think this is real?" Elena whispered. "All of this?" "What do you mean?" 6 months ago, I was cleaning hospital rooms and praying for overtime." She shook her head slowly. "Now I'm here, watching stars, with..." She trailed off. "With who?" Dominic asked softly. "I don't know what to call you. 6 months ago, you were the dying man in the room I cleaned." In the starlight, Dominic's face had lost its hardness. Something had softened in him, something permanent. "Elena, I spent 20 years building an empire through blood. I don't know how to be gentle." He paused. "But every day with you and Lily, I'm learning there might be another way to live." Before Elena could respond, Lily crashed into them. "Dom!" "Mama, I saw a shooting star. I made a wish." "What did you wish for?" Elena asked, pulling her daughter close. Lily looked at both of them, grinning. "I wish Dom stays with Lily and Mama forever." Silence. Elena blushed. She started to explain that wishes were complicated, that forever was just a word. Then Dominic laughed. A real laugh, warm and surprised and full of something that sounded like joy. "That's a very good wish, little one," he said. Lily yawned. "Shooting star wishes always come true. Mama said so." He lifted her gently, and she was asleep before they reached the door, one hand gripping his shirt, the other clutching Stella. Later, alone on the porch, Elena took his hand. "She's right," she said. "I want you to stay too." Dominic looked at their joined hands, at the cabin, at the stars. "Your grandmother said we're connected by invisible threads," he murmured. "You pulled me from darkness, and you pulled me from just surviving." Elena squeezed his hand. "Maybe that's what we are. Two people who pulled each other into the light." Above them, the stars blazed eternal, and inside, a little girl dreamed of wishes coming true. Sometimes the most profound miracles don't come from medicine or money. They come from the simple act of treating each other with kindness. We are all connected by invisible threads. When we pull on one, somewhere, someone feels it. And if we're lucky, they pull back. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life? Share your story in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories every day. We wish you good health, happiness, and peace. Goodbye for now, dear friends. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves and each other.